Well, welcome, Mike. I have been tasked with the job of interviewing you on mastery for this podcast. And this is a speaker interviewing a speaker. So this should be really interesting.
Should, yes. And it could be just as easily me interviewing you on mastery. So I just want people to know up front.
Yeah, but I'm really curious. Well, why don't we start here, Mike? Define mastery and then the benefits of mastery for people who may not be in a job where they think I should master what I'm doing, so what is mastery, first of all?
It's the highest level of excellence. It's the quintessential manifestation of your abilities in your greatest area of expertise. And so I look at mastery, the benefits of it are we all in one way or another seek and value mastery. We may not know it, but trust me, if you're having a heart operation, you want the best surgeon on the planet. You want the master. You don't want the guy who got C's in class. You don't want the guy who got B's or even B pluses. You want the A plus, the guy who's best on the planet. And so obviously with health, I'm making an extreme example there. But the same thing, if you go to Carnegie Hall, you want to hear a master perform. If we come to your program, we want to hear mastery on communication and the visual ways that you illustrate. We don't want to see your B show. We don't want to see we want to see the best. And so people innately value that. And so the value of offering that is that you're sought after, is that you get to perform in venues or in the greatest mediums for your art form or business or whatever it is that you are gifted with.
So, I mean, that's one of the benefits of mastery, right? Is that there'll be a high demand for whatever it is that you offer. Do you think there are other benefits to mastery as well?
I think there's a personal benefit. What I've done in a lot of the, as speakers, we're into personal development. So looking at what our gifts are, our purpose, our talents, and that kind of thing, what our innate design is. I found that there are two words. It's great because I had a mission statement. I've taught this for years, and I did a program with a friend of mine, which revealed some things I hadn't realized. There's two words that stand out in just my design. One is mastery, and the other is transformation. And so personally, for me, when I feel like I've done something on a masterful level, or I've done something that I feel like creeps into the world of mastery, and I do say creeps into it because it's very difficult, I feel great. It makes me, there's a personal satisfaction that goes beyond anything else for me. And I would assume that, and although I'm not putting myself in this category, I'm assuming this would be for a Michael Phelps or for anyone who's, Martina Navratilova in her day, whom I got to interview about this, by the way, to talk about that. And anybody who's reached the upper echelons of what they do, I imagine they just love the fact that they're there. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does. And what do you think a lot of people pursue mastery? Do you think this is something that a lot of people do? What are your thoughts on that? And if you don't think people do, why don't people pursue it?
I don't think as many people do as I wish did. One of the things that I teach is to make the choice to become a virtuoso.
I love that.
In fact, I have an entire TED talk on this. First of all, mastery is never an accident. No one is just even the most gifted savant, is not born with mastery. They're born with incredible ability, but there has to be a decided point. It's a choice to it. And so I ask people to make the choice to become a virtuoso. And I also make the point that the opposite of virtuoso, and virtuoso is a master, someone who's wakes up in the morning making the choice for excellence so often it's not even a choice anymore. It's become who you are. And so the opposite of virtuoso isn't failure. The opposite of virtuoso is competent. There are countless competent people in this world. There are precious few virtuosos, but what we find is the greatest impact, the greatest influence, the greatest income happen between competent and virtuoso pursuing that path. And so I make the point that most adults never make this decision. Even people who are at what they do, they don't make this decision. Instead, they rise to the level of good enough, okay, acceptable, getting by, what's required, rather than personal best, which is what we're talking about. And keep in mind, there are two different levels to this that, at least in my perception. There's the level of world-class mastery, which is when you get the people that we've all heard of, Serena Williams, you know, the people who are the best at what they do. There's also personal mastery. And for me to be the best I can personally be might not put me on the world stage, but it'll put me at my personal best. And again, there's a personal satisfaction that comes with that. And so most adults never make that choice for personal best. Instead, they do what's acceptable and okay. Does that make sense?
Do you think, yeah, it does. I mean, do you think they don't kind of pursue mastery because they think, well, I could never be the Michael Jordan? And they don't realize that there's that personal level of mastery that they should aim for. And that's just as, you know, that can be exceptionally rewarding as well.
Yes, I think that can be defeating to think, and we all had that, sort of the imposter syndrome or the intimidation that comes from looking at, wow, this person is on this level. There's no way I can. So why even try? And I've jokingly said that when I watch somebody play something amazing on the guitar, and I go, all right, I'm selling it for firewood, which is not true, but that's just a fun throwaway. But yes, I believe that there are people who get defeated by the intimidation of not thinking that it's possible. And that becomes a lot of mastery. And I know you know this, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but it comes down to belief, your personal beliefs about what is possible, what's possible for you, or what you might not know is possible. I think that's part of the key. And this is fun because I'm exploring some things I haven't really thought about. What you might not know is possible, because every human, I've never met anyone who isn't capable of more than they think they are. I've never met anyone who isn't capable of more than they think they are. Because
I love that statement.
Yeah. And so, in fact, I need to hold on to that because that's not bad. And so what we have to work on, mastery is first a decision, and then it's to work on your beliefs. You know, what are your beliefs about what's possible? And then it comes down, of course, we're going to get to this, but it'll come down to work ethic. But I don't know. Do you think about that? I mean, when you go to do what you do, which is so good, where do your beliefs about what's possible come in?
Well, for me, I have to take a step back, because when I didn't understand mastery, and I didn't think of it as a food I've never tasted before, I never knew how amazing it was. And it almost took me kind of having, first of all, just go, okay, I'm just going to have blind faith for this and go, look, let's just try it. And then by pursuing it and then trying it and then getting little glimmers of the benefits or some of the benefits coming through, then I was like, oh man, this is actually amazing. This is incredible.
Yeah.
And I think the quote that I always think of is the Steve Martin quote, be so good they can't ignore you, right? And to me, the undertone of that is mastery.
Yes.
And the moment I built a little bit of mastery, like you said, just kind of creep into that realm, you go, wow, not many people are playing at this level. And then mastery makes the competition irrelevant.
Exactly.
Whereas before, I was competing my ass off, right? And then when you're exposed to this world and you see it, here's the problem, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
But you're so right. And one of the things that I just noticed from what you said there is, and I've taught this in a different way, but I didn't see it in this light until you just said it, is that the real competition is with yourself. Once you dedicate, the real competition is no longer what's out there. It's with yourself. And I imagine that any of the great golfers, any of the great even business people, whatever the medium is, if you talk to the greatest, they'll tell you that really the one that they're competing with is themselves, to try to better what they do. rather than judge what they do or improve or not improve what they do based on others. I think that happens in the beginning. I think we all look at for you and I look at some speaker who's really good and go, man, I really want to be there. Yeah. So we compete on that level. But once you get to a certain level, then you realize, hold it. I'm off blazing my own trail here. I mean, you're blazing your own trail with what you do. What you do, I mean, for better, for worse, there's nobody who does what you do. And so if you want what you do, you come to you. And so you've kind of left behind the people who you were kind of competing with in the beginning, and you're on that path. I like to think that I'm maybe on the same kind of a path. And so it becomes, how can I personally be better without worrying about what others are doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think if people understood what you said there, it's going to help them begin the journey. I think so often we don't begin the pursuit of mastery because we're comparing ourselves to other people and then we feel defeated in the process. You know, whereas what you're saying is you've got to, this is about you. This is you versus you, and in a way that makes it easier to start, because if I just have to be better than I was yesterday, and let's say I learned a new instrument, that's easier than if I wanted to be better than Mike Rayburn, right? So it makes it easier to start. So we kind of discussed what mastery is and what are the barriers for people to begin their journey in mastery. I feel like the next question that I'm most interested in is, in your world, in the world of music, and then how do we translate that to everybody else? But how do you achieve mastery? Like, let's get to the how-to, right?
I'm going to be a contrarian here, and people say, well, you can be whatever you want to be. It's just about that's not true. You cannot be There's no way in the world that I could be a good accountant. I just couldn't. I might have the math skills, but I don't be
oh man.
Okay, there are things that you then could not be good at or great.
Yeah, can't be a doctor, can't be an accountant or a lawyer. No.
Okay, there you go. Now, so the first step to mastery is finding something that you are absolutely gifted with and absolutely passionate about. And there are things that I am gifted with that I am not passionate about. For instance, math. I'm good at math and I hate math. There are things that I am passionate about and I'm not very good at. I am passionate about endurance sports, cycling, running, and I'm decent at it, but I'm flat-footed as well. So that's God's way of saying, learn what you can from it, but that's not your goal. That's not your
right.
Nobody's going to lose to me in that area. But when I found guitar, a combination of guitar, performance, and then this is the part that people don't, because they notice the guitar, they lose this part, but exhortation or personal development. Somebody once said, I was probably 30 years old before I realized this, maybe a little older. So, we were talking about, it was a little group that had gotten together, and we were talking about each person's gifts and talents. And my gifts in music and performance and comedy, and somebody said, well, Mike, this is a very close friend, so he knew me well. And he said, Mike, I think your gift is exhortation. And I said, what's that? I never even heard the word. And he said, I mean, I'll give you the definition in a second, but he said, it matters to you that the people around you do better. And I almost cried because he nailed it and I didn't even realize it. And so it does, it matters to me. I need to know that what I'm doing is somehow informing, uplifting, teaching, edifying others, that people benefit from it. Which is why when my dad gave me, it was no accident, and I think from God's level, not my dad's, that my dad gave me the book Psycho-Cybernetics when I was in 11th grade. So I'm in high school. That's heady reading it's about belief, the power of the mind, the power of focus, the power of believing something strong enough that it becomes reality. And this is 11th grade, I'm reading this stuff. And so wow. I realized that combination of music, comedy, or performance, and personal development, exhortation, those were all, I didn't even know what a speaker was. I didn't until a friend of mine said, you're clean, you're funny, you have a message, you're a speaker, and you don't even know it. And I what's a speaker, And so I believe the first step is to identify what you're great at and what you love. So
do you feel like do you feel like people always come up with the excuse of saying to you, well, I'm not good at anything. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I'm just not good at anything.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Excuse me, but bullshit.
So you called them out on it. I like it.
And excuse me for saying, I shouldn't have spoken that way. But I say it that way because I want the edge there. I want someone to take an edge to that because it's freaking not true. My book is called What If? And the first sentence of the entire book is, you are a genius. And I say it out of motivational speak or rah-rah because I don't believe in that. I say it because it's demonstrably true. We're all genius, but we're all genius in a different way. And quite often, our area of genius, first of all, was probably, it might have been laughed at or just not accepted. And so we went, whoa, can't do that. And we thought, well, we'll be like everyone else. And what we find is that your greatest impact, influence, and income will come from how you are different. And so your area of genius. And also, like for me, your genius might be a combination of things that others don't have. And that's what it is for me. And I would say it's probably what it is for you as well. But for instance, I am not the best guitarist in the world. I am not the best comedian in the world. And I'm not the best speaker in the world. However, I'm the greatest freaking combination of the three of them. Now, I might be the only combination of the three of them, and that's fine. Okay, but I that's me, and that's my expertise. That's my genius. And I ask people questions like, what is it that you and you alone can do? Or what is it? And I want people to think on that question. I would sit down with a piece of paper and an hour and your favorite beverage and light a candle and write what is it that you and you alone can do. And then the same question phrased differently is, what is it that you do better than anyone on this planet?
Right, because people are thinking it in kind of, they're thinking it with a singular mind. They think it's one thing that I'm going to be good at. But what you're saying, it's the combination of things that makes you a genius, not one single thing.
Right. And I've listened to your presentation, and I've watched you, and your genius is not just your message. And it's certainly not, I mean, I say certainly, meaning you're not there. You're not there to be an illusionist. You're going to use that, but you're going to use it in an expert and masterful way that will reach people that no one else can reach. I mean, you and I might look at our presentations and think, oh, look, we both teach this, or we both teach this, but you're going to teach it in a way that no one else could hear, that there's somebody out there could only hear it from you in that way. And the same thing true for me. And so anyway, I believe that everyone does have a genius, and it's just, sometimes it's a combination.
But I love the clarity that you provided just now, is that so many, I think, again, a huge block for people is that they go, well, I'm not good at any one thing. However, the insight that you just so eloquently provided us is that it's the combination of things. And this is why I think a lot of young people struggle with this, because you don't have multiple things to pull from just yet. You know, like it's so important that you go and gather these different ingredients so that when you bring them together, you create something truly unique. And it's okay that you're not good at anything yet because you're still young, right? I think that's something people struggle with. Yes.
And there's two adages of mastery that have to do with the number 10, sort of the number 10 or divisible. One is that when you find that, it usually takes 10 years of exploration where you're under. It usually in studying masters is, even Mozart, you listen to the things he did at a very young age. You know, you're listening to a symphony and you go, oh, he composed that at 7, and for real. Wow. Now we look at that symphony and it doesn't change the world. It's Mozart, but it's Mozart before we became Mozart. Okay. It was his development period. So there's usually, it's obviously going to vary, but it's usually a 10-year development period that almost everyone who becomes a master goes through, where they're not a master, where they're exploring, where they're trying. You see this with Stevie Ray Vaughan, who's my all-time favorite guitarist, where he went through a period where he's learning this, playing in these blues clubs, and then he's trying to emulate. He could sit there and sound exactly like Clapton. He could sound exactly like Hendrix. He could sound exactly like whomever he wanted to. But it wasn't until after those years of doing that his own style emerged, and that's when he changed the world of guitarist. And so we find that. So that's the one divisible of 10. And the other one is the famous in the book Outliers. Talks about the 10,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours to become a master of anything. I will generally agree with that with one really important caveat, and that is the difference between 10,000 hours of practice versus deliberate practice.
Right.
The difference there is practice. I mean, I could pick up the guitar and play 12 hours a day, but if I'm simply going over solos I enjoy, playing the things I like, going over songs, trying something that I heard here, whatever, in a haphazard way or just in a way that makes me feel good for 12 hours or just whatever, I'm putting in the hours, but I'm really not getting anywhere. That's practice. Deliberate practice is where you're focusing on what, number one, is your greatest opportunity, and number one is your greatest need to improve. Number two, greatest need to improve. When I practice, I will make a point of looking, for instance, one of the pieces that I play that's, I don't know how many people in the world can play it, but only very few play it on a guitar, and that is Bohemian Rhapsody as a classical piece.
Nice.
And so all the parts are coming out of one instrument. I don't even sing it, so it's all coming out of the instrument. And it took a freaking long time to get. And there are certain passages, certain areas that are still challenges to this day. I practice those a heck of a lot more than I practice the rest of the piece, because the rest of the piece, but there's certain parts, I mean, I could explain them, but it's not worth it. There's certain parts I know are more difficult. So the people who become masters are the ones who focus on the area of their expertise that needs work.
See, but that's such a almost a foreign way of looking at practice for many people, because practice, that means practice is painful.
Yes, no. Yes,
Right.
It is painful, but yes, it can. I shouldn't say it is. It can be painful.
Yes.
Obviously. And you show me any world-class athlete who said no.
Yeah.
Painful. No, they all know it's painful. They know they work.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Slathering and hurting and all that kind of stuff, and that's what it takes. But well, there's a satisfaction to it. But I have a good friend who made an observation, and he made it about me. So I'll just share. I humbly share that he said this to me. That I feel it was a compliment, but it was an observation I hadn't known. He said, I know why you're good. And I said, okay, I'm listening. He said, you fell in love with practicing. And I went, I love to practice. I look forward. I wish I could just do nothing but practice. I got too many other things I have to do.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I wish I could practice all the time.
How did you fall in love with doing what's hard?
Well, I found something I'm passionate about. Oh, and hard is not, actually, I don't know, maybe I'm different. I know you're probably the same way, but it almost has to have a challenge to it or be hard for me, or I don't want it. I'm not bored with it. But you look back, there is almost nothing in your life that you're proud of that was easy.
Yeah, it's true.
That you were proud of. You know, I look back at the things I'm proud of having done the first hologram performance on stage with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I did a duet with myself, and I was a hologram and all this.
Wow.
That was the closing of the 2014 NSA conference in San Diego. And so no one had ever done it. I love to do things no one's ever done.
I feel like the reason, I mean, in what you're saying, you love it because you know what it brings. You know the feeling that it brings once you have practiced it and you've gotten good at it. You know, I think a lot of people just, again, are unaware of the benefits of mastery. And it's just inspiring to hear you talk about it. And I think the question that I really want to ask you, Mike, is if I'm an accountant or I'm an electrician or I'm a sales rep for a drug company, how do I apply mastery there? I mean, I understand deliberate practice, but how does it translate to the professional world? Well, you know, for people who aren't in our world, you know, of practicing magic or practicing music.
Right, practicing magic or practicing music, we get that. And so our challenge, the reason we have a career is what we do is we translate that to business every day. And so, yes. So how's that translate? It translates in every way you can do it. So I look at, at the end, I ask people to do an exercise. I can do my full presentation now. I'm talking about becoming a virtuoso. I asked them to do an exercise, and I don't have time in a keynote to do it, but in a workshop I would, where I say, I want you to write this question at the top of a piece of paper and then answer it. The question is, what would it take for me to become a virtuoso? I ask people to do this exercise, and I say, I'll guarantee you 3 things about it if you'll do this exercise. Number 1, it probably won't take you more than about 10 minutes. And that's because number 2, you already know the answers. Most of us know exactly what we need to do, and we just don't do it.
Yeah.
And I believe
so
that.
True. Yeah, me too.
And so it's like, hey, well, let's quit keeping them out here, put them on paper and do them. And number 3, it'll change your life. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be, type A 24 hours a day. I don't think that's mastery or success. It's simply saying, my time is worth it.
Yeah, but this is the thing that I feel is that during this whole pandemic, I think what's become extremely apparent, Mike, is that people who are virtuosos are the people who are still relevant. Like in times of comfort and ease, then sure, you can get away with average, you can get away with satisfactory. But during a time of an emergency or a pandemic like we are right now, then the average starts to sink to the bottom, and the only thing that stands out are the masters.
Correct.
And I think that's clearly one of the benefits that I hope as people listen to you, they start to realize is that, again, Steve Martin, right? Be so good they can't ignore you. If you're going to do it anyway, be so damn good at it that people can't ignore you.
Exactly.
And you're recession proof, you're pandemic proof if you do this.
One of the things I said about for speakers is the pandemic was a chance to find out how many of us, number 1, walk or talk.
Yeah, true.
Number 2, have talk worth walking.
I can tell you now that right at the beginning of the pandemic, it shoved me on my face, and I was like, "Damn, it's so hard to walk the talk right now because things are so hard." So it really did put all of us to the test. On the topic of before, how do we build mastery? Like, I thank you for the answer. It just gave so much insight, even for me. Insight I haven't thought about before as well. And I just wanted to ask you: Do you think? What about self-awareness though? What if there are people who think to themselves, "Oh, I'm already great at this"? How do we approach that? I know I fell victim to that in the world of magic. I was like, "Oh, I'm already really good," and until someone cared enough and told me in a very tender way that, "No, you're not, mate. You're kind of crap." So, how do you build that self-awareness, or do you need other people, or can you build your own self-awareness? Or
well, you got that from we get self-awareness from outside our self-awareness. From people. I had one time where I did a program it used to be called ING Corporation, they're not Voya. And I did a program for them in Minneapolis. Standing ovation, encore, sold every piece of, CDs, books, and everything that I brought with me. So 2 standing ovations, everything. And the woman who booked me sat down with me afterwards, and I'm like sitting down to get my due accolades. And she said these words to me. I'll never forget it. She said, "Mike, that was good. Let me tell you how you can be great." Oh. And I was like,
damn.
What she did was she pointed out a part of my program that was slow. And as soon as she said it, I knew it. I knew she was right. And the audience was way more forgiving. But if you just go by the audience, that's not it's a good indicator, but it's not the full indicator. And so he was right. So once I improved that, my show got that much better. So I think it's a kiss of death to think that you are a master. I consider myself, I don't think that I am a virtuoso, but I have made the choice to be on that path. And I know a lot about the path. That's what I teach. I don't think that I am. And I have other people say, people say that I am. I've had others say maybe I'm not. And so I don't think of myself, but I think that when we start to think that, it's kind of the kiss of death. It's kind of
it's like that paradox, right? The moment the master stops being a student, the master is no longer a master. So it's that kind of strange paradox. You have to continue to be a student in order to be a master. It's such a strange paradox. Yeah, and
Robert Fripp, who's Patricia Fripp's sister. Patricia Fripp's one of the greatest speakers in the world. Robert Fripp is one of the greatest guitarists in the world. He's on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the top 100 guitarists of all time. And I studied with him. And I studied with him I went over to Spain and stayed with him for a week in a monastery. It was very weird. But he made a point. And this is a guy who's one of the, Rolling Stone calls him one of the 100 best there has ever been.
Right.
And he said, you are a teacher, you have a teacher, and you are a teacher, always. You are a teacher and you have a teacher, always. So we're always helping those who are coming up or helping those around us who are peers. Like you and I help each other. We're peers. We can help each other. And you're always learning from someone. And if you lose that, then you're not.
That's such a great ingredient. I love that. And again, I really think that, like you said, that self-awareness is so important, and we can only get that self-awareness from an external kind of perspective of awareness. So, regardless of what industry you're in, those of you listening to this, I think it's very important to build that self-awareness, because that then lights a bit of a fire under your ass to go, let's find that teacher.
Yes.
Because that's what we need to be able to pursue mastery.
Right. And it might be a group of teachers. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's something that I find kind of keeps me in check, is by always having a teacher in my life, and I love it. Thank you for providing that. And something really cool that I've just got here, and in the world of magic, this is something we use, right? We use a three-way mirror. Right. So this is a three-way mirror to help us build self-awareness, and no matter what we do, even as speakers, we film ourselves to build self-awareness. So I think that self-awareness ingredient is such a critical element when it comes to mastery.
Self-awareness, like feedback. However we can get feedback. Woman that night gave feedback. If you were at my program, I would ask you afterwards, what do you think? What? And you'd probably be very gracious and say, hey, good program. Hey, maybe you think about this, and we need to become sponges for that. What gets in the way of ego can drive you to mastery, but can also keep you. It's a double-edged sword. It's got two sides.
And I also think what's really interesting is most people are afraid to tell us the truth, though. Most people are afraid to tell us how we can improve. I often tell this to the younger people that I sometimes speak to. I say to them, the 5 closest people to you, they know how you can improve. They're just afraid to tell you because they're afraid to hurt your feelings. So I think learning how to create a safe environment to seek feedback, and make sure you seek feedback from the right people as well. Don't just ask random people. If you ask the random audience how you can improve as a speaker, you may get a mixed bag of beans, right? So to me, who you ask, and learning how to create a very safe environment so that you can learn how to improve. Because again, the secrets to you unlocking the next trajectory in your life, the closest people to you around you, they tend to know. They're just not telling you.
Exactly, which is where I am such a proponent of mastermind groups. Because mastermind groups where you know each other, you get to know each other. So it becomes a regular thing.
Yeah.
You get to know each other, and you have each other's backs. I'm in one called it M6. There's 6 of us. Dan Thurman, Tim Gard, Walter Waldman, Chad Hymas, Dan Burris, and me. And just if I would just sit as a fly on the wall and listen to those 5 talk, okay, because I would benefit from it. But when they've got your back, they love you, that they would never say something to cut you down. They don't need the ego act. They are not in that ego trip of having to put others down so they feel better about themselves. They're simply helping you get better. That's an environment you want. That's where mastery can be fostered and nurtured and watered and grown. That's,
again, another ingredient that's necessary as you move towards mastery. A safe environment and a group of people who love and want to see you succeed.
Yeah. There's 2 other points to make sure that we get into this that I think that as I was preparing for this, that I wanted to share about mastery. Mastery, growth toward mastery is always greater focus on detail. It's always greater focus on detail. When you're in the beginning of something, you learn the general way it works, and you just find a way. If you're learning to play American football, you learn how to throw the ball, how to catch the ball, how to run with the ball. You don't learn you're not learning the little details. As you get further and further along in your growth, no matter what it is, you're getting you have greater and greater focus on detail. So right now, I might play all the notes of a piece correctly, but I listen to the way this passage worked with this passage, or the way, or maybe the little buzz I had on the strings and the frets, or maybe I've altered the tempo in a way I shouldn't have done. These tiny little details, and those are what I need to work on. And so our perspective gets more and more microscoped. And so as you get better as speakers, we will now, I mean, when you start, you're just trying to memorize your speech, you're trying to get up there and say something to hope people make some impact or whatever. But as you get better and better at it, as you get deeper into this and more time into it, then you realize, hold it. When I step over to, when I look away at this, or hey, I've got this little tendency, I keep looking to the right more than I look to the left. Or, you know, there's little details that you do that become important to see. For instance, I have a tendency to speak too quickly. And so once I realized I can slow down, I started studying comedians like Ron White, who speaks impossibly slowly. But, you know, but those little details. So whatever career it is, as you get better at accounting, as you get better at engineering, as you get better at computers, as you get better at sales is a detail thing. Simple details can make or break a sale. But in the beginning, it's just like, do I know my product? How am I presenting to them? What am I supposed to say here? You know, once you get into it more, you realize about the connection and the relationship and the little details that might help that person make a decision. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, there's so many kind of common threads between your world and my world. And I think even the world, like you said, in the professional world, as magicians, we have to learn sleight of hand first, the general sleight of hand. And then we call the area of specificity that you talk about, the microscope, we call it subtleties. So then magicians learn this little subtlety, the art of subtleties can actually make this trick turn into a piece of astonishing magic. And that often is the difference between, again, a trick and then an astonishing moment.
Yes.
And the difference is in the subtleties.
Yes. And what we're both saying is that this is true for any career. It's true. It's true for parenting. It's true for anything that matters. It's true for your health. It's true at anything that really matters. That if you want to become a master at it, it is a greater focus on detail. And
it really is.
I think the other thing that I wanted to share is something that I call, I think I named it this. I don't think anybody told me this, but I call it the law of diminishing returns. As you get better, it takes more to achieve less. So as you get, and you have to embrace this point, okay? Because what happens is in the beginning, I can pay a coach to help me in speaking, and they give me all these ideas. I go, wow, this is great. I changed this thing and did whatever. As you get really good, you're paying a coach to help you make one little change. But those who are masters embrace that fact, and they still do what that work is to get all that work to get that little bit better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And then you put it in such an inspiring way. You know, thank you for revealing that world to us in such an intimate way, because I think often people don't pursue mastery because A, they don't understand it. B, again, no one speaks to the benefit of it in the way that you just have. I hope people feel excited because it's a whole new world. Yeah,
I have to like keep my nerd side in check here, because I get into this. And I get into, I'm like, yes, this is so good. This is why I need to teach this mastermind. I say teach, it's going to be teach and sharing, but I want to teach this mastermind because I get into it. And I think that I lose people, you know, I think people are going.
No, I don't think you're losing people. I think your excitement comes through, and your dedication towards your own craft, and also your passion for teaching people this, I think it's shining through, Mike. And what I love about just our call now and our kind of chat now is that, I mean, I believe I pursue mastery, and you've excited me to also continue the path of mastery as well, because you're right. It's the little things now at our level that makes the biggest difference. And I think for most people, like, again, hear Mike out. If you can become a virtuoso in your space, you're going to become so good that your customers and your clients, they can't ignore you. And it no longer becomes, should I work with Mike? It's how do I get to work with Mike, right? And when you get to play again in that arena,
yes,
it's a different world.
And it's also, you want to talk about freaking job security.
Yeah, bro, there you go.
What you do, because that's one of those things where if you're the best at what you do, or one of the best, if you're up on that level and your boss or your organization is, your clients are not treating you the way that you want, you'll find some others because they'll want you. People desire mastery. They don't desire mediocrity. I was
reading the book on Netflix, and one of the tests they do in Netflix is they say, well, if this employee is thinking about leaving, would I fight for them to stay? and I think all of us have to ask ourselves that question, right? If we wanted to leave, Karen, who's our beautiful manager who helps us manage our entire business, if we wanted to leave, would she fight for us to stay? And it's one of those things where if you are a virtuoso in what you do and you're in your company, if you wanted to leave, would they fight for you? And I think if you are a virtuoso, hell yeah, they're going to fight for you. Yes. But again, if you're just average, they'll probably be like, yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
You can leave. Mike, do you have any concluding thoughts on mastery? If people are kind of, again, I just think that if you tasted this, you can't go back. But this is the message. Do you have a message to send to those people who have never tasted this before and you're trying to convince them this is the best food in the world? What would you say?
Oh, it was like sushi for me. I was like, raw fish? No freaking way. And right now, and somebody said, Mike, you trust me, right? I said, trust me, I know you. You're going to love this. And so I did. And right now, it's my all-time favorite meal. Yesterday was my birthday, and I had sushi for dinner.
Oh, wow.
It's like whatever that greatest meal is. I'm glad you came up with that analogy. That's what mastery is. And keep in mind, here's what I think. Here's my TED Talk called Become a Life Virtuoso, which is, I call it, because another way to say it is master what matters, is we all get what it means to become a master, the importance of becoming a master in our career. And that's what the realm that you and I have spoken about, the medium in which we've spoken about this. But really, I thought, well, who am I to teach? Well, there was a point about 3 or 4 years into my doing this where I thought, who am I to teach this about my career and not apply it to the things that matter more, like being a father, my health, my spirituality, my finances. So it's really that same question: what would it take to become a virtuoso in whatever the other career is? The other thing is, what would it become for me to become a virtuoso father? Virtuoso in my relationship, have virtuoso health. And so it's really mastery is about it's not about being great at everything. It's not about being good at everything. It's about being great at the most important things. And that there is enough time for that.
No, and Mike, thanks so much again. I absolutely love it. You've inspired me, and it's not that that's hard to do. But it's just, I've been doing this for a long time, and you've kind of sparked that inspiration in me. So thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate you joining us for this podcast, Between Two Speakers.